Sports Professor Rick Horrow inside the $1.3 trillion current business of sports, and you're on the record, a wide sweeping podcast of all aspects of sports law, administration, deal making, marketing, business, and otherwise. Started to figure out how to unlock this business 50 years ago. First Miami Dolphin ticket ever, $5. The average NFL franchise revenues at that time, a little under $4 million. The average baseball salary, by the way, about $29,000. The current dollars up 15 to 20,000% over those numbers. Well, we had an interim interfering deal. It's called COVID. 5 years ago, 4 years ago, the industry kind of shut down. When it came back, we're close to where we are today. The Cowboys at $8 or $9 billion. The Yankees up near that. The NFL TV contract, $111 billion, streaming all over the place. Started my career at Harvard Law and then began teaching there. Who knew what the growth was going to be? Used to be the Wild Wild West. Today, there are over 450 academic programs all over in all of those fields, and it's growing by leaps and bounds. The podcast doesn't answer every question, but it poses many. And it begins with a relationship with my book called The Sport Business Handbook. 109 contributors all over the industry. We grab a few. That's where the podcast starts. Sit back, watch, and learn. Sports Professor Rick Horrow, speak with you after the break. Sports Professor Rick Horrow, inside that $1.3 trillion business of sports. Your opening drive 5 for this week begins with the Boston Celtics. The Gaston family, sold to Wyc Grousbeck in 2002 for $360 million. A big deal. He owned the team since 1983 for estate and family planning purposes, but yet the 18th championship, obviously recently, and a $4.7 million newspaper and magazine valuation has driven Grousbeck and his folks to say, yeah, let's sell. Could they be the first $5 billion team? Jason Tatum is 26. Jaylen Brown is 27. They both have humongous deals. The Tatum $315 million contract extension and more. The bottom line is they are set up for the future. And the bottom line is the Celtics say they expect to sell a majority stake in 2024 or 2025, the remaining balance in 2028. Grousbeck, the team governor, until then. Michael Bloomberg added his financial fuel to the fire of Alex Rodriguez and the Lohr Group as they relate to the Timberwolves and Mark Taylor. And the bottom line of all of this is that at the end of the day, the Taylor Group may do the deal, Glenn Taylor, or the other possibility is that deal might go away. It's in litigation. We'll see. The bottom line as well, as far as value, Mark Cuban sells his piece in 2023 for $3.5 billion to casino interest. Will this be the first $5 billion sale? Might certainly be that. That's number one. Number two, LeBron. Look at his extension. He signs a 2-year contract extension for $1.135 million, running him through 23 seasons in the league and edging out Vince Carter's 22-year career. Deal's approximately $2.7 million below the $104 million max, sources told people. And the contract includes a player option for the second season, which grants James a default no-trade clause and consecutive seasons and 1-year guarantees with his veteran status. He's 39 years old. He wants to do is help the LA Lakers find an impact player. Didn't happen with Klay Thompson, but it might happen in the future. And LeBron James, as we know, has taken a pay cut only once before in his career, and in 2010 when he joined the Heat. How did that work out? Well, obviously 4 straight finals. So he is all in, and we'll have to see how that all shakes out for him long term. That's number 2. Number 3, the Warriors, and the bridge into number 3 as we look at what the Warriors have done, and obviously the Celtics and LeBron, it's all about basketball. Let's shift to soccer. The National Women's Soccer League, Willow Bay, Bob Iger, that family is looking at a league-high $300 million to buy the team in L.A. Obviously, a big number, will continue to be bigger. The San Diego Wave sold for $113 million. The Portland Thorn sold for $63 million. The Chicago Red Stars, $35.5 million. The expansion franchises in Boston and Portland are now at $53 million in expansion fees. Obviously doing a good job. And the $240 million media rights deal with ESPN, CBS, Amazon, and Scripps expires after 27. Is this as big a deal, for example, as the Commanders at $6 billion, the Broncos at $4.6, the Panthers $2.7, the Hornets $3, the Suns $4 billion? Well, it may or may not be, but at the end of the day, it is an incredible number for the National Women's Soccer League, and it continues to skyrocket. That's number 3. Number 4, Jonte Parker receiving federal criminal charges in his sports betting scandal. The new court documents say that prosecutors link Porter and 4 men who have been charged with scheming with a player to make bets. The 4 men face charges for conspiracy to commit wire fraud, and also the dramatic race to the airport, if you remember, at JFK, where the flee of the country was the motive, with checks of $80,000 and $12,000 in cash caught at the border. And the bottom line is the leagues are not fooling around. The Padres player Tucupita Marcano, minor leaguer David Fletcher, Otani, and Ippei Mizuhara, all Otani cleared, but everybody examples galore as you see an opportunity to try to make a case that gambling is serious business for the NFL, NHL, Major League Baseball, basketball, and the like. That's number 4. Number 5, looking ahead to the Major League Baseball All-Star Game. The economic impact, over $90 million for the city of Arlington and North Texas. The idea also is $25 million more than 2019's number in Cleveland, $1 million more than the number in Los Angeles last year. Let's remember, the Metroplex has been incredible. HKS at the forefront. Globe Life, AT&T, the retail complex, looking at the entire area. And remember, Lowe's Arlington Hotel and the Convention Center open in early 2024. This will be the first mega event in that area. City hosted the 2011 Super Bowl, the 2020 World Series at a neutral site, Big 12 football championship game last year, the 2026 World Cup, the 2030 men's basketball Final Four, among others. And when you look at the numbers, it is an incredibly significant event and will continue to be, thanks to HKS, other major political leaders, Mayor Ross, Mayor Williams before him. It is a major boom for North Texas and the city of Arlington. Speaking of which, our interview this week is very important to all of us. Rob Matwick, Texas Rangers Executive Vice President of Business Operations, talking the business of baseball, the incredible new home, Globe Life Park, and the All-Star Game. Rob Matwick from McKeesport, Pennsylvania, earned his degree in English at the University of South Carolina in Aiken and his master's in mass communication from USC in Columbia. Prior to Major League Baseball, he was a sportscaster, sports information at South Carolina, and sports information director at Wichita State. Currently in his 38th year in Major League Baseball, working for the Astros, Tigers, and now the Rangers. Instrumental in the coordination of Minute Maid Park in Houston and now Globe Life Park in Texas. Inducted into the Texas Baseball Hall of Fame in 2005 and the MLB Professional of the Year in 2012. The bottom line is he, in collaboration with HKS, put together a tremendous building that everybody is proud of. Here's Rob Matwick.
You've been in Major League Baseball, or in baseball proper, 38 years. It's a lot of time. You probably know more about the inner workings of baseball than a lot of people. I'll hit you with a kind of a perception question out of the box first before going into your career. What's the one thing that's changed the most from when you got into Major League Baseball in the first place in 1985 when Dick Wagner called you to today?
Wow, that's a great question. It'd be easy to say pace of play because that certainly has been a big differentiator this year across our industry. So it's probably the most significant change that I've seen to the game, certainly in the time I've been in it, if not the entire time that I've been watching it, which has been my entire life. So that's been a big one. You know, it's been interesting to see how players have evolved, how teams, particularly on the front office side, have evolved over time, have become more sophisticated in terms of our approach to business. Interesting now to see franchise valuations growing the way they have. Teams now looking at sports anchored development like we have here in Arlington, but not only here, but we're even working with some smaller communities that want to use baseball as a nucleus for development in their community. So it's really been a paradigm shift in terms of, you know, facilities that were just surrounded by parking lots. You came to the game, you parked the car, came to the game, got in your car and went home. Now everyone's looking for the experience. So I think we're all focused on that now and trying to, you know, create those lifelong fans, but even give the casual fans that opportunity to experience something more when they come to the ballpark.
And we'll talk about Texas Live in a couple of minutes and Arlington Live. But obviously that template is very important, whether it's Camden Yards or the Ballpark Village or anything in between in all sports. So obviously you start and everybody needs a break. Tell us the story of 1985 and Dick Wagner calling you. Was it a wrong number? What the hell happened?
Might have been. Might have been in retrospect. I was working in college athletics. I was the SID at Wichita State. Interestingly, I worked for an athletic director, a gentleman named Lou Perkins, who happened to be my college basketball coach at the University of South Carolina at Aiken for the last 2 years of my career there. I took an extra year to finish my undergrad degree, and Lou sort of had me learning at his feet as a student SID. But long story short, I went to work for the Shockers, and I had, unbeknownst to me, I'd been given Dick had been given my name by a few people in the industry who he knew, people who worked in college athletics. In 1985, the Astros had gone through a period of having had 3 different media relations directors over the course of that season. So Dick came in as a new president and general manager and said that he was looking for someone on the college level who he could bring in and sort of teach the game, if you will, and learn the business. So he reached out to a few friends that he knew that had some connections to college athletics. My name apparently came up from a couple of those folks. 2 of them, at least, I had never met personally, but I'd worked with their assistants. And long story short, it led to a phone call on a Sunday night in September of 1985 with a guy who identified himself as Dick Wagner. And he said, you don't know me, but I think I have a job you might be interested in.
Well, and I guess the advice so you were there for 20 years, obviously. Look at all the titles. It's media, and then it's ballpark ops, and you know everything about everything relative to the Astros. And you've done the same thing with the Rangers, with a little stint with the Tigers. But I guess my general question is, when someone at a higher level asks you to do a job, you say yes. You're not going to say you're not qualified, right? You learn how to do that job and you move on. Is that kind of right?
You know, one of my mentors was a lady named Pam Gardner, who was our president of business operations with the Astros, and she was our VP of marketing before that. But when we were in the construction process at Minute Maid Park, transitioning out of the Astrodome, I remember early on in that process, we didn't have a big front office at that time, and she asked me to go to a couple of meetings for her. And she said, just go, take notes, and if they ask you a question you don't know the answer, that's okay. Just come back and we'll figure it out. We spent 4 years just figuring it out. And I think that's sort of been my mantra throughout my career here. You never want to be the smartest guy in the room, right? If you are, they tell me you're in the wrong room. So you always want to be able to learn and absorb from other people. But, when we put our minds together collectively and try to problem solve, there's nothing that we can't figure out or find a way. And I think that's one of the great things about our business, too, is the collaboration.
Was your experience at Minute Maid, did it make it easier or harder to do Globe Life? Were you more of a perfectionist, or did you anticipate everything coming down the pipe?
From my perspective, I think it made it much easier because it's a process that most of us might get an opportunity to go through once. I mean, a lot of teams will do renovations to facilities, but to actually start from scratch, to sit in a room with designers and architects and have a programming meeting where they tell you, hey, just blue sky, given anything you could have in here, what would you want? And to get that, not just from me, but across everybody in the organization, everyone had that opportunity to contribute their thoughts to the original programming. And that document was over 600 pages long by the time it was done. So to take that collection of thoughts, if you will, and then to take that back to a design studio and begin to turn that into actual architecture, but not just the architecture, but the operational aspects of it is pretty unbelievable. So having gone through it previously in Houston, I think helped me to prepare. And I think it helped me to coach others in the organization who had not gone through the process. There are times too, there's always a little bit of tension in that creative process between the architect and the operators. And I've told this to other organizations that have reached out to us. I said, don't ever let anyone, nobody knows more about your business than you do. There are times when decisions have to be made and they're not always easy. And, our project, we spent a little bit more on our project than we had intended to. But I think the end product is sort of the proof in the pudding, based on now the revenue we're able to generate here, the types of events that we can do in the building. It has already borne itself out, and I know it will continue to do that over time. I think that's probably the biggest thing for the Rangers. I think as great as the ballpark in Arlington was, as we sit here in the midst of an early summer heat dome over North Texas, and the start of a homestand, we've all been lamenting how challenging it would have been to have had a great homestand in the outdoor venue here. But we're so much more flexible and nimble in this building.
I'm starting a hashtag. Thank God for the air conditioning and roof. The hashtag, whatever the social media does, we're going to do that. So you mentioned collaboration, which is interesting. And by the way, you get high marks too. And this is not being gratuitous. It goes the other way. When you talk to a lot of the architects, sometimes they run into meetings beginning of the week with owners. So we don't want to deal with these people. We can't. The HKS people, find you collaborative, easy to understand, the vision. And I guess it's inspiring to work with someone who makes some suggestions, but designs a building from the revenue out, from the fan experience out, and doesn't just take a cookie cutter, but working with you on how to maximize your business.
I was very fortunate. One of my colleagues here today, and he's now president of our River Entertainment Group, is a young guy named Sean Decker. And Sean, at that time, when we started the programming process for Globe Life Field, was our VP of ballpark operations. So he had done events. Then he sort of came over and was working with me on ops. And I think we were really fortunate to have someone like Sean with us at the beginning, because he had a really good feel and understanding for how we might be able to do events better if we took into consideration some things that we did in Globe Life Field. So he was an important collaborator, and certainly our sales team and partnerships team, all contributed thoughts, and the great Chuck Morgan from the ballpark entertainment side of things, in terms of how we would present the game of baseball to fans. But then we were always looking for other ways. How can we make the building functional 365 days a year? And we've talked about it a lot now, that in many ways, the decision to go with a synthetic grass surface, the ability to cover that, retractor mound, reinforcing steel on the roof so that we can rig our speaker arrays from the roof as opposed to angling up and deflecting a lot of sound off of steel in the upper levels. Just little decisions like that have allowed us to, take the events business to the next level without sacrificing, the quality of our baseball experience for our players and for our fans.
Now, I know also from following kind of the architectural history and the development history, you had a firm work with you that was successful in Indianapolis and Minneapolis and just doing SoFi and obviously AT&T across the street. And I assume it's best practices. I assume it goes both ways. They bring some ideas to you and you react to them.
No doubt. They had some very specific thoughts about how to generate more revenue in the building. We've got multiple levels of suites, not only at the edge of the field, but I really like the level that we created about 20 rows up, sort of on our lower concourse, a level of suites there. It's funny, we've toured just in the past few weeks here. We've had 2 teams from Japan that have visited us. And Hakoto, the Ham Fighters, actually opened their new ballpark this spring. And we introduced them to HKS back in 2017. They actually ended up selecting HKS to design a new retractable roof building. And I think it was the first new building in Japanese baseball in about 30 years. Now we've had 2 other teams come and visit us recently. So I think we may be getting ready to go through next generation of Renaissance and stadiums over in Japan. So we may have indirectly had influence over Japanese baseball, which is fascinating.
The fact that you had a 60-40 vote on a Globe Life referendum with a beautiful building next door that may have made it easier for the Cowboys and then esports and all of the other things they did. But also, your building was great. It wasn't roofed. It had capacity issues and point of sale issues. But one of the hardest things to do when you're doing one of these is to make your building that you currently play in look and feel antiquated enough where people would understand and vote for a new building. What say you on that?
Well, it's a fair point, and it's hard to sit here and think that we would spend $1.2 billion just to solve the weather issue.
Right.
But in many ways, from a baseball standpoint, we did. But we did do that. We've given ourselves the flexibility to still play baseball outdoors, certainly April, May, and we hope to have some October baseball outside.
Yeah, you do.
We hope so. But we also created a tremendous training facility for our players. North Texas, we all believe that, it's a great place for players to live. And, we want our players to be here year round, but we needed a facility that could equal that. For a number of years at Globe Life Park, we had players that in the winter could come in and lift weights in our facility, but we would go to high school facilities, indoor high school football facilities in the area so that they could do their long toss and their running, just because typically the field in the winter here was covered, to protect the roots of the grass. So it really was limiting in terms. So, we didn't have many players that lived in the Metroplex, but now that we can provide this year-round training facility here, it sort of extended our reach from that standpoint. They can get on the field in January, take BP now, and run and throw and do all the things they need to do to get ready to go to Arizona.
And it's not clear. It's clearly not as simple as putting a cover on a building. All of the other events that you can generate because you're retractable and that gives you 24-hour, 365-day capability. Give us an idea of the kinds of events, if you have a net number for the last year or two, and what it means as far as economic impact as well.
I think the average on that has been over 250 meetings and private events. Of course, we have a really significant preseason college baseball tournament. We've done college wrestling the past 2 years. We've hosted the Big 12 baseball championship here for the past 2 years, and we hope to get ready to extend that agreement here soon. We've had conversations looking at maybe a basketball opportunity, probably on the college level. We've had some conversations with our partners over at the Stars. We would love to get maybe a stadium series game here. Of course, the Cotton Bowl hosted the Big Winter Classic a few years ago. It was fantastic. But, then you start to look at all the other things that are out there, the concert business, the WWE type opportunities. Now that we have this type of indoor arena environment, if you will, or can create that opens the door to all those opportunities. So, our team created we did the Army Air Force football game for the past 2 years. So, we've proven we can do football. The college baseball tournament and the Big 12 tournament have been fantastic. Done a number of high school baseball games too, and high school football here. So, no limits.
So relative to the extended experiences, you bring events in from out of town. You also create events, and that means a lot to the bottom line.
Absolutely. Yeah, it really has been. And I think that's the job that the Rev team has really done with content creation. They, the meeting business here is pretty much nonstop. Like I say, it's averaging more than 250 non-baseball events per year. And that's everything from, our foundation gala this year is a great example. We literally did a 1,300 person event on the field with Kenny Chesney the night before a Rangers home game. We finished the Big 12 baseball tournament, on a Sunday typically. Last year we played baseball on Monday. This year we had a day off on the Monday, but without damaging our field, which is always the concern on a grass field when you have that many games over a short amount of time. But we're able to do that seamlessly, with the surface and with the facility we have here at Globe Life Field.
So it's $1.1 billion, $1.2 billion, and you get the vote done, and you clear the ground, and you expedite construction, and you're all excited, and you're ready for March 2020. So Rudy Gobert goes down to Oklahoma City, and he tests positive, and then all hell breaks loose. But yet you recover, and you not only survive and thrive, but you hold the World Series between the Rays and the Dodgers there in the bubble. And if that doesn't validate Major League Baseball's trust in your building, nothing does. Talk about that.
Well, it was interesting because, we were 3 days away from a Chris Stapleton show, and that was going to be the first event here in the ballpark. And I was actually driving home listening to the Mavericks game, and Chuck Cooperstein came on and said, hey, there's a delay in the Oklahoma City game tonight. Not quite sure what that is. I remember Chuck saying, so I immediately got on my cell phone in the car, called John Blake and said, hey, have you heard about this delay up in Oklahoma City tonight? We better pay attention to this. I remember when I got to the house, I turned the TV on, and there was that shot of Mark Cuban looking at his phone, with that, that shock in his face. And here we go. But it's interesting. We pivoted to high school graduations, and we did 64 high school graduations that year because we could distance people in our stand. So, the state helped us, the county, the city in terms of health department, and we literally went in and tie wrapped seats so that guests couldn't sit, within 6 feet of one another. So we were in that process that spring of trying to prove that we could safely host events here. And to your point, when decision was finally made to continue the season without fans, which was the right thing to do that summer, we started to press and convinced Major League Baseball that we could host a neutral site World Series with a limited number of fans to do it safely. And you talk about collaboration and cooperation. I mean, from health department to fire department, police, our guest service staff, our Ranger staff, everybody pitching in to make that event happen. And it was not the way we wanted the first World Series championship to be crowned on our field. Happy for the Dodgers, but we're looking forward to the Rangers experiencing the same thing here soon.
What is the sense of how the Rangers then parlay the mixed-use development and Globe Life and everything around it? Let's say 5 years from now, what does the whole complex look like 5 years from now?
Well, that's a great question. We know for sure that the new Lowe's Arlington, the Convention Center, the National Medal of Honor Museum, and One Rangers Way, which is our first foray into residential, will all be open. So 5 years from now, that phase of construction will be behind us. I would assume that if leasing goes well on the One Rangers Way project, which is 300 luxury apartment units, that you could expect that we might consider more residential, because we think that's one of the pieces that's missing here. In 5 years, it'll be interesting to see where Choctaw Stadium is. We're certainly excited about the return of the XFL. We hope that the XFL will have, a longer shelf life under the leadership of Danny Garcia and Dwayne Johnson. So we hope that will continue in Choctaw. And then we've started to look at some other opportunities actually in the face of that building that we're working on potentially developing now. Hopefully those will continue. But if not, then we'll have to pivot to some other opportunity there. So we're always looking for ideas.
On the Record with Rob Matwick has a lot to say heading into All-Star Week in Arlington. A big deal for everybody. Well, let's close out with the 5 to watch coming up between now and the next couple of weeks. Big time in Wimbledon, at the British, the Olympics coming up. But here are some issues that you might want to focus on. First, surfing. The market projected to hit, surfboard market, $4.6 billion by 2028. research organization which focuses on emerging market trends, suggests the global surfboard economy is expected to reach $4.8 billion between 2024 and 2028. The increased number of surfers, very important. Global marketing as well, including media competition, important. Also, alternative materials, high-quality surfboards, more expensive materials, all combine to make this look more like the golf industry, in some respects the tennis industry, than the surfing industry, and everybody seems to like it and move forward. So, that's number one. Number two, let's focus on NASCAR, coming off of a very successful Chicago street race and then a commitment of sponsorship for retail with Lululemon. They produced items at the race ranging from branded tank tops and t-shirts for $70 to leggings for $150. Other licenses made gear for racing, including Nike, 47 brand, New Era, Johnny O, and Horn Legend. Chicagoland successful, another great event. Racing history includes hosting what is said to have been the first automobile race in the U.S. in 1895. Certainly will continue in Chicago down the road. It's number two. Number three, look for 2K and the industry, esports. It may be a nuclear winter in many ways. NBA 2K players will be more well-known in the future, popular and better compensated than LeBron James, some say, including Ted Leonsis years ago. But the league is effectively taking a hiatus. The NBA-backed NBA 2K League debuted in 2018 and marked the first major U.S. sports league to form its own esports property, said it's revamping its operations to focus on influencer-based content driven in part by NBA, WNBA players, and celebrities. Seems to be a little bit of a shift. Sports as a content genre has struggled within esports, with many fans and competitors preferring other types of games, such as first-person shooters. The bottom line is, we'll see where the industry really does go. Then, number four, as far as what to look for in the future. High school concerns over NIL club impact on student athletes' eligibility. Club activities for student athletes. The Georgia High School Athletic Association recently advised its student athletes to avoid signing with the NIL club, citing eligibility concerns. Advisory follows similar warnings from the Florida State High School Association, indicating broader apprehensions among state associations regarding NIL clubs. Georgia High School athletics could profit from endorsements, say the organization, but advertising and endorsements, not from ventures allowing boosters to funnel money from them. According to the Georgia High School Athletic Association, the actions could jeopardize student eligibility and team participation in postseason events. On the Florida side, the Jacksonville Florida Times-Union reported that several high school teams in Florida had already received booster funds through NIL drafts, and the funds have been available but removed from the platform completely within state regulations. Bottom line is this: the NIL club efforts to adjust and align within these regulations will be critical in maintaining its relevance and support for high school athletes down the road. You can bank on that. And then finally, COSM. It is an organization that signed agreement with Fox Sports, ESPN, NBC, TNT, spanning several areas of programming. They've listed tickets for sale in recently identified venues, like the one in LA. Tickets to view the tournament's third-place match and fourth-place match going on sale on the company's mobile websites. The COSM venues, scheduled to open in Dallas later this year and already in LA, augmenting spatial audio, simulating a front-row viewing entertainment environment featuring communal hall spaces akin to sports bars outside the dome. Bottom line is, watch the way this is implemented HKS design. You'll hear more about this in coming months, I can assure you. Well, that's the show for today. We'd like to thank Rob Matwick with our All-Star Baseball theme. We'd like to thank all of the participants that created this podcast, Kali Kazire and others. We'd like to thank also y'all for listening and watching. And join us next week when we continue to go on the record. Happy All-Star Week, everybody. Sports Professor Rick Horrow. Speak with you soon.